In the dim belly of a slave ship where light was scarce and the air thick with salt, sweat, and despair, a child entered the world. It was around 1729. The groan of timbers and the crash of waves were the first sounds to reach his ears. The smell of brine mingled with the stench of confinement. He was born in transit, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, born as property, to be bought and sold, commodified, before he had been acknowledged as a human being. When the ship docked in the Spanish colony of New Granada, tragedy struck almost at once. His mother died of disease, one of the estimated 2 million slaves who would die before reaching their destination. His father, facing the life of a slave, jumped overboard in desperation and despair, surrendering himself to the ocean rather than to a life of bondage. The boy was left an orphan before he could speak. A bishop baptized him with the name Ignatius. His origins were African, but his new identity was crafted by colonial hands. Then at the age of 2, he was carried once more across the sea, this time to England, and placed in the care of 3 unmarried sisters in Greenwich. For nearly 20 years, Ignatius Sancho lived in their household. He dressed their tables, polished their silver, and obeyed their commands. But his intellect, even then, could not be hidden. Years later, he would write of this period with understated bitterness, quote, "The first part of my life was rather unlucky, as I was placed in a family who judged ignorance the best and only security for obedience." The sisters forbade him books, believing education would breed disobedience, but there was another household nearby, one that would change everything. John Montague, 2nd Duke of Montague, had seen the young man in the street and recognized a restless mind. The Duke lent Sancho books from his own library, encouraging him to read, to think, to expand his vision of the world. These books became a lifeline. In their pages, Sancho found not just information, but dignity. Eventually, he fled the sisters' home and sought refuge at Montague House in Blackheath, but soon after, the Duke died. The Dowager Duchess, perhaps moved by her husband's regard for him, took Sancho in as her butler. It was here he learned the secrets of high society and fed his appetite for art, music, and literature. When the Duchess died in 1751, Sancho inherited £70 and an annuity of £30 a year. In Georgian England, this was more than a windfall. It was a step toward independence and freedom. With it, he pursued his creative interests, composing music, writing poetry, and engaging in the lively correspondence that would later make him famous. His musical collections, country dances, and songs were sometimes marked with a proud phrase, "composed by an African." In 1774, with his health declining, Sancho opened a grocery shop at number 19 Charles Street in Westminster. From this small shop, he sold sugar, tea, tobacco, goods brought from colonial plantations by the same imperial networks that had once carried him as a child in chains. The shop also placed him in the heart of London's political life, close to Parliament itself. By owning property, Sancho qualified to vote in parliamentary elections. He did so in 1774 and again in 1780, making him the first known black man of African descent to cast a vote in Britain. In an age when most working-class white men had no vote at all, his participation was both unusual and significant. But Sancho was not content to live quietly. His letters became a platform for his political insight, his wit, and his humanity, and in 1778 he wrote a letter to his friend, London bookbinder John Wingrave, that captured his philosophy with extraordinary force. Sancho wrote, "The grand object of English navigators, indeed of all Christian navigators, is money, 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 for which I do not pretend to blame them. Commerce was meant by the goodness of the deity to diffuse the various goods of the earth into every part, to unite mankind in the blessed chains of brotherly love, society, and mutual dependence. The enlightened Christian should diffuse the riches of the gospel of peace, with the commodities of his respective land. Commerce, attended with strict honesty and with religion for its companion, would be a blessing to every shore it touched at. In Africa, the poor wretched natives, blessed with the most fertile and luxuriant soil, are rendered so much the more miserable for what Providence meant as a blessing: the Christians' abominable traffic for slaves, and the horrid cruelty and treachery of their petty kings, encouraged by their Christian customers who carry them strong liquors to inflame their national madness, and powder and bad firearms to furnish them with the hellish means of killing and kidnapping. Make human nature thy study, wherever thou residest, whatever the religion or the complexion. Study their hearts. Simplicity, kindness, and charity be thy guide. With these, even savages will respect you, and God will bless you. Here was Sancho's genius, a man who could condemn with precision and yet offer a vision of what could be, commerce not as a vehicle for domination, but as a blessing when paired with honesty and moral responsibility. He saw the slave trade for what it was, an unholy marriage of greed and power, cloaked in the language of civilization. In his letters, Sancho dismantled the racial pseudoscience of his time. He understood that slavery was not the inevitable lot of Africans, nor ordained by divine will, but rather the engine of a global capitalist system that demanded cheap labor and maximum profit. To the novelist Lawrence Sterne in 1766, Sancho wrote, "Consider slavery, what it is, how bitter a draught, and how many millions are made to drink it." When Sancho died in December 1780, he left behind more than a widow and children. He left a body of letters that spoke to a Britain on the cusp of change. 2 years later, Letters of the late Ignatius Sancho, an African, was published, becoming a bestseller. In those pages, readers found the voice of a man who had been born in bondage, but had lived as a thinker, a voter, a composer, and a friend to some of the most notable minds of his time. His life's arc, from a slave ship's hold to the heart of London's political life, remains one of the most remarkable journeys in 18th century history. Ignatius Sancho's story is not merely about survival, it is about transformation. It is the account of a man who, through literacy, moral clarity, and resilience, confronted the very system that sought to define him, and in doing so, wrote himself into history.